Hello, welcome to Chapter 6 of How to Read a Book. This chapter is called Pigeonholing a Book, and that might not be immediately clear as to what that is, but I will walk you through it. And hopefully at this point you've read the chapter, or maybe you're using my lectures as an introduction to a chapter, but it's really important that you read the book on your own to get the most out of it. These lectures are mere sort of outlines of each chapter. So here's an outline of my lecture. I'll go through the importance of classifying books, what you can learn from the title of a book, practical versus theoretical books, and then kinds of theoretical books. So what about the importance of classifying a book? Here's rule 1 of analytical reading. In chapter 6 we get to the stage of reading called analytical reading. You've done your preliminary reading, kind of scanning through the book. Now you're really getting down to the details. So you must know, what sort of book you're reading, and you should probably know this as early in the process as possible. Preferably before you begin, because different sorts of books have different aims and should be read in different ways. Poetry versus history. So, of books, you have a really broad classification of fiction and nonfiction, and of course, fiction has to do with books that aren't historical, factual. They're just really trying to create a scenario, a story that's not true, not based in reality. Whereas nonfiction, they're expository works that convey knowledge. So that's a very broad breakdown of books into two categories. One, a category that is like designed to convey knowledge, and another, and I don't know what the design of fiction is, but it's certainly not to convey knowledge. But although it may do that, it may have some knowledge in there, but that's not its intention or purpose. Now, of expository works, you have stuff like history, philosophy, physics, morals, and so the category of expository works is extremely broad, and depending on what sort of expository work you have, that will tell you how you should read that book. And Adler, after chapter 12, he starts getting into how to read history, how to read philosophy, and I don't assign those chapters to you, but they can be very useful, especially as a student here at CSN. You're taking the general education courses, and maybe you take a philosophy course and you want to know, well, how do I read a philosophy book or a philosophy work, and that will help you. Oh, so what can you learn from the title of a book? You shouldn't neglect the classificatory information that you can gain from the title of a book. Now, a title of a book isn't just sort of the way to grab the reader's attention. It gives you information about the sort of book that you're dealing with. So, for example, the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Now, this could be fictional, or it could be non-fictional, so that doesn't really help you there. But it does give you sort of the subject matter of the book. If this is the title, you shouldn't be surprised that the first chapter is about the high point of the Roman Empire, because if you're dealing with the decline and fall, you might start at the high point, and in fact this book does. Or you might have a book called The United States, A History. Now, surely this could be fictional, but it looks like it's giving you a non-fictional account of the history of the United States. So you already know it's expository, and you already know it's a history book. So people, so says Adler, tend to ignore titles and prefaces because they don't think it's important to classify the book they are reading, but in actuality it is. And with the preface, you get much more information about the sort of book you're you're dealing with. Okay, so then the practical versus the theoretical. Expository works divide most generally into theoretical books, which focus on knowledge, and practical books, which focus on action. Although practical books convey knowledge as well, because the appropriate course of action that you need to take is dependent on knowledge of the situation and etc. Right? So, said another way, theoretical books teach you that something is the case, and they don't sort of recommend any kind of way of living on the basis of that necessarily. Whereas practical books teach you how to do something. Okay, so a theoretical book would be maybe, a book on the nature of black holes. Okay, that would be a physics book. A practical book would be the very one we're reading for this course. How to read a book. It's teaching you how to do something, how to read a book. Okay, but there are various kinds of theoretical books, and Adler breaks them down into three kinds: history, science, and philosophy, as broad categories. And then he's thinking, if these categories are broad enough, all theoretical books will fit into one of these categories. So with history, the essence is narration of the past, obviously, and then science treats matters that can happen at any time or place, and it seeks laws or generalizations. So, for example, physics and geology books, and then philosophy, like science and unlike history, is like science and unlike history, in that it seeks general truths rather than an account of the particular events. But the philosopher does not ask the same questions as a scientist. So the scientist might ask, how does the universe function? Whereas the philosopher might ask, where did the universe come from? And that's the end of our explanation of Chapter 6. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you enjoy the book.